Hey everyone, and welcome to the Perfect Bite podcast, your fusion of food and entrepreneurship. You'll hear stories from chefs, restaurateurs, CPG brands, and more from the food and bev industry. All of them are at different points in their journeys, talking about their experiences and how they've cooked up something new. Let's dig in. And welcome back to the Perfect Bite podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Perkins. Summer is well on its way, and there's nothing better on a warm evening than a fresh cocktail or mocktail, taking in the great outdoors. And just like our favorite foods we talk about on this podcast, simple, fresh, and flavorful ingredients make the best drinks. Today's guests are here to teach us how to grow and drink our own gardens. They even founded the world's first cocktail farm. Please welcome the Simple Goodness sisters, Belinda Kelly and Venice Cunningham. Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, you two. I'm so happy to see you today.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
I'm so glad that we got connected, and I'm obsessed with everything that you're doing. You're in the gorgeous Pacific Northwest, and we can all learn some tips and tricks on how to have the best cocktails year-round.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to hear a little bit from each of you. When do you both first think you fell in love with food and produce? And what were some of your favorite foods as kids?
This is funny because as sisters, of course, we know all of that about each other, right? And I have forever been obsessed with food, and to a point where it's something that I get made fun of in our family for a lot. If we were on a road trip, I was like, hey, it's noon, it's lunch. Hey, it's 6, it's dinner.
Even if we had breakfast at 11, it was still noon and lunch is at noon.
That's how it works. And then Venice, not so much. So she was a really picky eater.
Very picky.
And as the younger sister, I emulated a lot of what she did. And one of the things that I picked up on was, well, if she doesn't like it, I probably don't. And then it took me becoming a teenager to start trying things like, oh, actually, I've said I don't like this my whole life. I totally love this. So I had to get out of her shadow of food and learn that we actually have very different tastes.
Yeah. And in terms of produce, I mean, I think because I was a picky eater, I like strawberries. Like I liked all the berries because they're nice and sweet and you don't have to put any sauces. I did not like sauces. So I liked everything as
or condiments.
Yeah, as plain as could be, like dry sandwiches, just butter on rice, very plain and basic. And so fruits required 0 sauces, which was my preferred method of eating anything.
Isn't it so amazing how that changes as we get older, too? As a kid, you would think of things like Brussels sprouts and beets and all these things, and it sounded so gross. But now I can't get enough of them.
Yeah,
truly.
And I think, too, like having your own garden and just part of it is just growing up and going to restaurants and having a good chef make you something one time instead of like that terrible version your aunt made or something. And then part of it is growing things, and it really inspires you to try things a lot of different ways. And the flavor's better to start with when it's fresh, and then it teaches you to cook as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, we're learning so many new ways to look at, I feel like, especially vegetables and produce of all kinds within restaurants. There's just so much that you can see on the plate, and it's really cool that we can now see it in our glasses as well, really clearly.
Yeah.
So what were some of those moments? Again, your typical sister duo, again, sounds just like our nieces. One of them will not eat anything unless it's carbs and cheese, and the younger one is starting to branch out more, but it did take until those preteen teenage years to be like, no, you're allowed to try food. What were your careers like as you were growing up, as you were getting ready to figure out what you wanted to do? How did you get into the food and bev journeys here?
Very circuitously. Well, we grew up in a very middle-class household. Our dad owned a business and our mom was a teacher. And so we worked in college, and we both had food jobs in college. So that was a big one. We had pretty opposite food experiences in college. I worked at dive bar and like a Southwestern diner kind of style. And then Venice worked at a really upscale place.
Yeah. And I went to school in Montana, and Belinda went to school in Portland, Oregon. So also just very different food environments.
Yeah. And I also worked like catering. And Venice was at Big Sky. She was at a private resort feeding literal billionaires' children because she was at like the kids version of the resort place. So they'd hop off the ski lifts and she'd feed them chicken nuggets.
Yeah, it turns out billionaire children also love chicken nuggets.
Just want that Kraft mac and cheese. They just want the chicken nuggets.
Yeah. And then after college, we moved home. Both of us moved home. We have a really big family. And so even though we really liked the areas we were in and were very influenced by them, we ultimately decided we needed to be back near family. And in our area, it's tech. Everything is tech. All job opportunities lead to tech. There's, of course, other things, but if you have a comm degree or an early childhood ed degree and don't want to be a teacher, tech is a great place to go into. So we started out in HR at different companies, different roles, but both did HR positions.
Yeah. Turns out when you have a human development degree, which is my actual degree, everyone has no idea what that is. And so they just try to put you into HR. And so I got recruited out of college. And then I actually worked at Microsoft first. And then Belinda is 4 years younger than I am. And so she was moving back home and needed a job. And Microsoft is always hiring these contract positions. And so I was like, hey, you should just come and work with me. And that was the very beginning of us working together. And then I eventually left and she stayed. But through that tech opportunity, we got kind of experience the food side in a little bit of a different way, more as like a vendor. So Belinda was hiring a lot of caterers in her event planning role. And so that's what led to her next business, or her first business, I guess.
Yeah. So I was the recruiter at Microsoft and decided that wasn't going to really work long-term for my family. Remote work at that time, this was 2011, all the way up to 2015. It wasn't a thing. So it was very frowned upon in my department to do anything remotely. And even though a lot of my job was remote by nature because you were traveling to different schools. So I had my first son and just needed something that would allow me to have a little more flexibility and remote hours, and started a mobile bartending company. So that was purely based on just interest. In college, I was the one who was like always trying to make cocktails, even though we'd drink a lot of beer too. I was always trying to play around with something fun and act at being an adult. So I would like be having dinner parties and try to get all my roommates into that. And I also just loved reading Martha Stewart magazine and reading cookbooks. And I saw this hole in the beverage industry. I wanted to do a mobile food concept because this is the height of food trucks in 2015, 2016.
It was when cupcake trucks were really popular.
Huge, and I was so into cupcakes.
Like everyone else. So she's like, I'm going to do a cupcake truck. And then when she ran the margin, she realized there's very little margins in cupcakes. But you're a lot more in booze.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a place to impart a lot of flavor and a lot of like interesting perspective, a cupcake versus a cocktail.
And people get equally excited about cupcakes and cocktails. So,
especially if they're paired together. But I will say too, I love that you had these moments. Again, you're having the grind, big corporate tech, Microsoft, as big as you can get in that type of space. And you each are taking your passions and little bits you were learning from your jobs, it sounds like, and bringing them into the next steps here. What was it like to open a mobile cocktail bar? What was the process? Any sort of licenses or just challenges that you faced? And what were the really exciting parts? I imagine that folks probably loved this at weddings and things along those lines.
For sure. Weddings were a place that I knew that there would be instant revenue. And I was trying to move more into the corporate world because I knew from my job that there was a lot of money available for morale event and always needing food and beverage support at their promotional events. But it's a little harder to get into those. But I wanted that because it's midweek and it's money without having to give up your Saturday night with your family. But weddings was a good place to begin and an easy way to network because the wedding industry is so tight and it has very clear networking groups, and it's very easy to kind of like introduce yourself and start working with venues. Starting the mobile bar company at that time, wildly different than it would be today because it was such a new concept then. I was one of a handful in the United States. And so convincing the liquor board and the health department on how these would work was very interesting. You know, they wanted you to have the full approval that a food truck making smash burgers or oysters would have. And all I'm working with is lemons and limes and fruit. And so that was very interesting to learn. But I think with anything, any business you're starting, you just have to be really tenacious and willing to get through that red tape. And every time you get an answer that's a no, you call and you try to get another answer and you ask questions. And like, if you're willing to do that digging and explain your concept through and through and really understand like what their rule means and what you're trying to do and where those differences lie, then you can push through. And that's really just what it took. A lot of negotiating and a lot of like stick-to-itiveness.
I think your passion really took you through. And like you said, if you want to make it work, it'll happen. And usually it's just a matter of connecting with someone, figuring out, like you said, what needs to happen for them to feel happy about the situation so you can keep moving forward here.
Exactly. Yeah. And like having that corporate experience was helpful there because I had contract negotiation experience. I had that professionalism under my belt. So there were definitely things that I had to learn, not coming from the industry, but there were other things that were very helpful that I brought to the table that made it, I think, possible to get the business off the ground.
That's awesome. And what type of cocktails did you focus on the most? Were there any favorites that folks were ordering?
Yeah, so at the beginning, we didn't have a liquor license. The ability for a mobile concept to get a liquor license evolved in the years that I was doing it in Washington State. The law changed about midway through. So at first, you weren't allowed to have a liquor license. So I was dependent on people bringing in their alcohol. So I knew that I had to do a concept that made the mixing of the drinks as elevated of a value set to the customer as the alcohol itself. I couldn't just get by doing like Grey Goose martinis or something. So they were very seasonal. They were very focused on, scratch components, unique things. It was really seeing the farm to table movement that, again, was starting to take off in 2015, 2016, and just moving that to the bar side and seeing like, how can we do that whole bar chef mentality with a mobile concept? And so that kind of led to Venice's next entry into the food world when I was like, some of these ingredients are really hard for me to find. And how am I going to get them?
Oh my goodness. So Venice, you become a farmer.
Yeah. So we were at the time, I was working at a different tech company, also had my first child, and we had just bought the farm, I don't know, a couple of years earlier, like 2 or 3 years. So neither of us grew up like farming at all. But we bought 10 acres. So it's not a huge farm and really had no idea what we were going to do with it. We started with some like little dairy goats as pets and then.
Which you started at your first house only on like an acre.
Yeah. So we knew, like, first, I like love animals and I love meat. And so I was like gearing towards that direction of now we had more land, but realized that that is also wrought with red tape. And so really looking at what could I do on small acreage that could give me the most amount of profit with the smallest amount of effort. And so we started growing heirloom garlic. Garlic grows really well in the Pacific Northwest. And we also have a pretty large elk herd that likes to visit the farm. And so we were warned by the people who had farmed our property before, if you grow anything that they like to eat, they will come in the middle of the night and they will destroy all of your crops. And so it turns out they don't really like garlic and they stay away from it. They do make a mess, but they don't eat it. And so we started with that and I just learned a lot. The other thing was that because I was so brand new and had never really grown anything, like I had never even had a garden before I started farming. And so I knew that I just wanted to try to figure out how to grow things and how to grow one thing and that one thing really well. And then I could expand. So I was doing a garlic farm and it was going well. We would have like this annual garlic sale and everyone would come and sell out all of my garlic. And so it was after a couple of years of that when Belinda started poking me a little bit and saying, hey, I'm doing these really elevated cocktails and I'm making my own simple syrups, but I need a bunch of sage. And like sage is hard to find in bulk.
Find it in like the little plastic 2-ounce packages. Yeah. And I'm growing some of it on I had a small garden at that, like some 4x4 beds, but.
Yeah. And then likewise, because she was doing a lot of weddings and those drinks, everything wants it to be very pretty and the garnishes are beautiful and you get it and you feel like you're having this really cool farm to table experience just because of the garnish. She was like, I need some edible flowers. Well, flowers are hard because flowers are typically grown for ornamental purposes and so are sprayed in greenhouses and are therefore not sprayed with chemicals that are edible. And so it's not like you can just go down to the hardware store or the nursery and buy a bunch of these flowers and plop them in drinks. So, and then they're also very delicate, like little flowers are delicate. And so it's hard for even a farmer who's an organic farm, because we know a lot of organic farms, but like, how do you harvest that? How do you buy it from them? It's not on their normal harvest schedule in their farmer's market station. And so
the juice is not worth the squeeze for them.
Totally.
so she was like, hey, can you grow some of this stuff? And so I said, sure. And then it turns out that I was pretty good at growing. And I had like this epic failure in the garlic patch where all of my seed rotted because I didn't get it in the ground in time because it's a fall crop. And so one thing led to another, and garlic was out and herbs and edible flowers were in.
Wow. I mean, it's so amazing that your own business went through the life cycle of the plants. And I'm such a garlic girl. I would have been there. Like, I would have can I be honest? I would totally be into a garlic martini because I love a dirty martini. So if you all can put something out there, if you've worked on it before, like garlic with a bit of another herb, maybe a little spiciness, I would do it. I would do it. I love it that much.
Not to jump ahead to the book, but we have a lot of quick pickling recipes in the book, and you can pickle garlic, and then you could use that in one of the recipes in the book. You could just sub in garlic. So yeah.
And I do still grow
I've done it before.
Garlic at our soda shop, again, not to jump ahead, but we have a tasting room. And so the garlic festival that we had at the beginning is still alive and well. I don't grow as much of the garlic, but I kind of helped mentor some other farms in the area and encourage them to grow garlic so they can come to the garlic festival and sell garlic. And now I sell mostly elephant garlic, which is fun and even more niche than regular garlic. And so it's a way for me to continue to know my first love.
So for that festival, we do a garlic martini that's a vodka martini with pickled garlic. And then it's got like an olive oil wash on the vodka, which makes the vodka just like super, super smooth and a little bit like have that good, like fatty kind of quality as you swallow it, which sounds weird, but it makes it very, very smooth and easy to drink, even though you've got the garlic piece. It's a nice drink.
Holy cow, I'm in. I'm on the next flight. I'm coming.
Perfect.
This sounds amazing. So let's talk a little bit more. Okay, so Venice, what type of farming are you doing? Are you considered organic? Are you doing regenerative farming? How did you start to figure out what was the best practice for you all?
That's a great question. So we don't spray. The way that I describe the way that we farm is that like my family lives here. My kids are playing on the grounds. Like my family is very much out there. I'm digging in it constantly. And everything, I'm the only farmer that is working this land. And so we don't spray at all. But I also have to like have a way to keep my labor inputs as minimal as possible. So we grow under a lot of plastic. And that's been fantastic for us. It keeps the weeds down, and our plastic is reusable. So we're going on like our 8th year of the same plastic, which is lovely because we can just continue to reuse it. And we pull it up once a year and kind of pull all the weeds off of it. Because despite the fact that, it is a woven plastic, so the weeds are intense, and we have a lot of grass.
It used to be a horse pasture. So it's this really like thick grass that wants to grow through. So it's not like the typical weeds. We're not talking about like a dandelion every once in a while.
Yeah.
We're talking about like it's constantly trying to turn back into a pasture.
Yeah. And because we never like sterilized the ground, right? Like we never went through and did this big like sterilization. It's still very much there. And so it is. Last week, I spent all of last week just weed whacking, just trying to cut down and get ahead of the grass because it's knee high. And so yeah.
It must be therapeutic in some ways. You can take out your frustrations through the weed whacking here.
Yeah, I do love to weed whack. By day 3, my arms and my whole entire body is getting sore, but it's not my least favorite job.
So what was the moment that you two really became the Simple Goodness sisters, that you took each of these entrepreneurial ventures and you're now officially working on this brand together?
Yeah, well, what's funny about that is we actually repurposed the name Simple Goodness Sister through of just getting our own homes, me starting a garden, Venice adopting some goats, and then starting to make like goat milk soap and milking goats for the first time. We actually had a blog, like a lifestyle kind of blog where we were exploring these little moments of homesteading and playing around with some old-fashioned ways of doing things and trying to figure out some of these skills that we basically missed out learning when we were younger because like home ec was an elective we took, I was in choir instead. So we had that blog actually with another one of our sisters as well. And when I had the mobile bar and she started growing for the mobile bar, we started bottling eventually our mixers that were in our menu for the cocktail catering company. And those became the Simple Goodness syrups. Simple Goodness is a name that comes from inspired by our grandmother, our maternal grandmother, Nanny. It was what our Poppy said when he was asked to describe her for her eulogy to their priest. And so he said Nanny was just simple goodness. And we just thought that was like the best thing you could aspire to in life. She had 8 kids, raised them on a small farm in Kent, Washington, where, you know, she grew flowers, she grew a vegetable garden, they had fruit trees, they had their own meat that they raised and then processed every year, and they would go foraging in the mountains for different things. And so it was just very much this kind of like lifestyle that we were aspiring to. And that's the perfect name for the syrup company that we launched in 2018.
Wow, that is beautiful. And there are so many parallels to my own family. My mom's one of 9 who grew up on a farm, but central Illinois, very commercial, not the same. But there were moments where I was interacting with Black Angus cattle, and we had raspberry bushes in the summer that my grandma loved to grow. So it's like you said, there is something so simple and beautiful about connecting with our earth, connecting with the things that we're raising and eating. And it's nice to get away from that grind. It's nice to get away from the Microsoft life and focus on this, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is perfect because in the last, 50 to 75 years, it's gone from those things being just a normal way of life and a part of everyday living of how you operated to it being seen as like a luxury to be able to do that. I don't think that's the right way it should be at all, but a lot of factors play into that, like people moving into cities and less land and things like that. But I think part of the perception now is that in order to have that kind of a life, you have to have money, you have to have space, you have to have this luxury of being able to like spend the time and effort to put something in a jar because it's actually not cheaper than buying a can for 69 cents at grocery outlet. Love grocery outlet. Whoop, whoop, we love it there. But it is this weird shift that's happened over time versus the way that our grandparents grew up. It was the thriftier way to do things, and it was just the way that they were taught to do things.
Yeah. And a lot of that, there have been many conversations on this podcast already, which I love that we're all bringing it back to the fact that the food industry and the agricultural industries, especially post-war, have just changed dramatically. A lot of it was these larger food plus chemical companies, plus the government coming together saying, hey, how can we keep reusing some of these things that were used in World War II, but sadly it's now being used on our food. So I love talking with folks like you because you're, again, bringing it back to, it's like that meme that's out there right now, I forgot that this is what it should be all about, is that's really what brings us joy in this life and slowing down a little bit. Our nervous systems can't take this anymore. There's too much going on. Pretty much. Really.
Yes, truly. That was a big thing for us when we first had our kids too, was this idea of like slow motherhood, because we looked at the way that we have kids and now so many things have changed. We're old now, but Washington State didn't have
not at all
leave that it has now, which thankfully it does, but we didn't have that. And so it was like this rush to go back to work, this process of trying to figure out we both chose to nurse. So doing that in a corporate environment and then like getting home after 7:00 to see your kids and put them to bed. Like we were trying to find our escape from that. And the businesses came from like that place.
Yeah. From that, again, passion and mission that you were taught at an early age through many generations. So what were some of these first syrups? I love the ones that you have on your site now. Again, so seasonal. What did you first start with? And how did you figure out how to scale a CPG business like this?
I'm still figuring it out. The first flavors were rhubarb vanilla bean. So when going back to one of the questions where you asked, like, when did we become the Simple Goodness Sisters, that the moment past the blog where we were like, hey, maybe we could do this whole separate thing short outside of the blog. And it was at one of Belinda's first public events with the camper. She had made this drink that we now call the Genevieve. Well, she called it the Genevieve then. It's actually named after one of our friends who's just super classy but sassy. And so that is the drink in a nutshell. And she made it with a rhubarb vanilla bean simple syrup that she made completely from scratch. And so I was hired that day as the person to haul ice around because I have very strong muscles.
And no other bar skills at that time.
Yeah, and I cannot make a drink. Or I couldn't.
You're here to drink the drinks. You grew the plants and now you're here to drink the drinks. So we all have a job. We all have a purpose.
Exactly. We all have our strengths. And so basically what happened is, she made this drink. It was wildly popular. As I'm like hauling ice back and forth, I'm hearing a bunch of mostly women, to be honest, at this particular event, because it was a shopping focused event, just like rave over this drink and say like, oh my gosh, how do you make this? Like, I want to recreate this at home. And Belinda would basically, it's a very simple drink, except for it's the rhubarb vanilla bean syrup that is the complex part that is giving it the taste that everyone wanted to recreate. And so it's an involved syrup. It takes hand scraping vanilla bean and cutting rhubarb. And if you really want to pull that flavor out, it's even better if you freeze the rhubarb. And so like, there's all of these steps. And I'm listening to her explain the steps to some of these women, and I can just like see their eyes glaze over. And I'm like, these ladies are never going to make this drink. Like, that is way too much work for one drink. And we always say, usually by the time you're ready to have your cocktail, you're not trying to, have a project. And so I was like, similar to here Belinda is in this like food truck, essentially, with this like secret syrup sauce that she has, very similar to like a barbecue sauce. The natural progression is that you bottle that. You bottle the thing that makes your food or your drink extra special. And so I told Belinda, hey, Belinda, we should bottle this. Because like I have now too much rhubarb and you're not going to use anywhere near enough rhubarb. And you've got these super secret sauce recipes. And so she said, absolutely not.
Oh, no. And why?
I started one business. I was not trying to just add a whole nother one. So it was just something that took some convincing. She put together a very fake number thing she Googled off the internet business plan in Excel a little while later. And she just relentlessly pursued the idea until I caved. And then we had the first 3 flavors were the rhubarb vanilla bean because it was so popular. And then Marion Berry Mint was another one that was a big hit on our menu at the cocktail truck. And then the third one was a huckleberry spruce tip, which no one's doing anything even close to this. This is so Northwestern. This is so special. People will love it.
Turns out the reason why nobody did it is because it's wildly expensive.
Yeah. But we actually make all 3 of those still today.
Yep.
Wow. I was going to say huckleberry. That is so Pacific Northwest and special that, again, someone who's in a different part of the country would definitely give that as a gift or get it for themselves as a treat because, again, you want something that feels special and unique and craft, even when you're at home.
Yeah. Our huckleberry spruce tip is by far the syrup that everyone gets the most excited about. It's a little bit like our pumpkin spice latte, if you will. And so we buy all of the huckleberries in the fall because that's when huckleberries are ripe, but spruce tips aren't ripe or ready to be picked until May. And so it's really like a whole year project for us. And so we actually have a subscription box and it is called the Cocktail Farm Club. It ships every other month and it's where we get to be creative and try new flavors. And every June is huckleberry spruce tip release.
Farm Club is where we reserve like our most special flavors, the ones that take the most work or have the most expensive ingredients or whatever, because that way we know exactly how many bottles we're making for that membership and we're able to be a little more efficient about it while still offering these really fun things. Because it turns out huckleberry spruce tip does not work as a core flavor or a wholesale flavor or anything else, right? But we kept a place for it.
And so that kind of harkens back to your next question, which was how do you scale a CPG company? And how we have found is to really diversify in a lot of different, not just flavors, but programs. And so it's been through Cocktail Farm Club, which was obviously incredibly helpful during the pandemic, but continues to be something that also brings us a lot of joy because I think like just bottling the same flavors over and over again gets a little bit boring. And so it is our chance to like continue to experiment like it's the beginning of the business when we were coming up and developing flavors. And then having our core flavors and then having a wholesale line. So being able to sell to other boutiques. We really started looking at partnering with really, I don't know, like luxury brands. So we have a Pacific Northwest a hotel here. It's called the Salish Lodge. And we just love their location, everything about them. And so we were like, we want to be in Salish Lodge, but we don't want to just be behind the bar. We want to be in as many places as we can. And turns out they're really great about supporting other local businesses, Pacific Northwest brands, women-owned companies, like the whole thing. And so it's become a really cool partnership where we get to be behind the bar, but also in the spot and also in the coffee shop and also in like the room add-on packages. And so that's been fun, but it's just finding as many sales outlets as you can.
I think that's brilliant because, like you said, you might have, and you did smartly start with one product. Okay, how is that one product doing? Let's expand, say, the flavors behind it. But then it's, how do you reach folks through that? Especially with food, it's so important to see and touch and taste everything. And that's why I love the Farm Club box. Again, a CSA for cocktail ingredients, that's brilliant. And it's amazing that you two were the first behind a lot of these ideas. Can you ship this nationwide, or is it specific to the Pacific Northwest?
It is nationwide, definitely. And we have people like members who live across the country from each other, and then they get their box at the same time. And then it's like a moment where they come together and they hop on the phone with one another, like, the box is here. Let's make the drink, like sisters or best friends or whatever. So it's cool that that box from our farm can reach so many homes and enjoyment now.
Yes, I feel like that's such a great marketing moment. I immediately went to, if they tagged you in that content, then you're seeing your community come to life no matter where they are, which is very amazing.
Yeah, and we could go on about this for all day, and it's probably not the most interesting part of the story, but the CPG scaling piece, we're doing something very non-traditional. The food business is a very old and very traditional business. Grocery always been this kind of the same way, and it's slow to evolve. It's very expensive business to enter. Typically, you see brands with a lot of investment, and then there's really just one strategy, which is like get into as many places in your direct area and then regional and then nationwide, as many doors as you can get into, and then try to push that velocity off the shelf. A lot of brands don't even have their own website or their own direct shipping, right? They are mostly wholesale because that's the traditional route. We started from a direct space, which is very like of our age group, very millennial to have a DTC company on the internet, right? But we've started by using our social media, using our website and finding our community first, and then really trying to engage them, give them interesting recipes and share how we use our stuff. And it's a flip the script of what is traditionally done. So then we moved into wholesale, but I'd still say we do it in a much more non-traditional way where you don't find us on a grocery shelf. We are a more specialty thing. And, the business is very, very expensive, as I mentioned, and margins are pretty much awful. It's actually really crazy. You have to go into insane amounts of debt just to get into a Whole Foods. And so we've just opted not to do that. We're going to sell as much as we can from our website, and we're going to push that. And that's how we're going to grow. And so we've done it more organically, pun intended, more slowly, and just very non-traditionally.
I think it's so smart too. There's a reason that there was such a huge burst of D2C companies, say, over the last decade. And then eventually, yes, it's great to get a brick and mortar when margins do make sense so that folks can connect with you in person, especially because there was that, say, 1.5 to 2 years when we couldn't go in places. So now let's talk, because you just have some time on your hands. You opened the soda shop, which sounds like just the most lovely cafe and bar in the world where you get to go and experience your syrups amongst local foods. So what made you decide to take that next step, and how did you fall in love with the space that you have today?
Well, as the liquor license for the mobile bar evolved over time, there was the opportunity to get a liquor license where I could sell the alcohol, which was a big deal. It could really increase your margins and it could really increase your quality so that the drink would be made as it was intended. There was always walking into surprises at weddings and having to just think on the fly. And so there was a space available. Venice is also a real estate agent, and there was a space available within 5 miles of the farm in this little town, this old building. And she was like, this would be a great spot for you to have a catering kitchen, which was the requirement of the license.
Also, I will say on the farm, agritourism has been something we've both always been passionate about in terms of like connecting people to their food But in our area, especially, it's very challenging because there are so much red tape. The farm, like most farms, is on a well, a private well. And so it doesn't have a public drinking source. And then it's also on a septic, which again, most farms are. And so it made it really almost impossible to be able to have any sort of commercial operation where people could come to the farm and visit. Yeah. And so knowing that I wanted to connect food with people eventually and not knowing exactly what that meant, I knew that there would probably be a need for a commercial space that's on public water and public sewer. And so when it came available, it kind of fit both of our, again, at this point we were separate, but fit both of our gaps. And so it was one of those risks that we were willing to take without knowing at all what it would become.
Yeah. Goodness.
That's so you have this space and you start working on it and putting so much time and energy into it. And then you're like, okay, we're underutilizing this. So now how can we use it? And a lot of our business has evolved that way, not necessarily stopping and being like, do we have time for this? But right. Yeah, that's never the question we ask. We're just like, how could it be better used? And then we dream from there. And so the tasting room, having a place that was not mobile anymore, where we could just like really establish community, have a regular menu, that was really appealing. And so we decided to open in 2020.
The mobile business is hard because all of your events are usually on the weekends. And at this point, also, like our kids are getting older and we can't strap them on our back anymore and just go. And so then it was like, okay, but if we have this space, we have this whole room where they can just hang out while we work. And so it also fit that need. It's wild is that we started really working and deciding that we were going to open in like 2019 and set our opening date for 2020. In,
of course.
March, which, if you remember in the pandemic, Washington was like one of the first like big cases. And so we were shut down like first. And so literally the month that we were supposed to open, the entire world shut down. And so it was, we say now, it was probably the hardest thing we've ever done. And people ask all the time if we fight. And yes, we fight all the time. But during the pandemic, we fought all the time. Like it was awful.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, it was just such a big unknown and a terrifying unknown. You know, are we allowed to go outside? Like what a quick, like it happened. It happened. And so you were able to pull through it. Again, luckily with some pivots such as the farm boxes and figuring out how you can reach folks while they're still at home.
So many just weren't ready to give up yet. A lot of people just would have been like, here's the sign and stopped. And we just weren't ready to give up yet. It was too new of an idea. We were too attached to it. We saw the long term and we just kept pushing.
Yeah. I'm so glad. Yeah. You saw what was one of the lowest lows, and that's entrepreneurship, baby. That is, you will go through those. That's for sure.
The other thing is like, we also just couldn't get too attached to our idea. It was like, you had to keep the big picture in mind, which is like, we're going to open this space. Beyond that, it was like, because the rules kept changing, the restaurant that we had to open was nowhere near the restaurant that we had hoped to open. Like it was all to go. You couldn't even have, like, our whole thing was like, we want people to hang out with each other and enjoy our space that we spent so much time working on. And then it was like, nope, now you can come and you can go really quickly. And so I think the hardest part now has been like really trying to figure out what actually works in our space and like what the people actually want, and almost be training some of our existing customers that like, yes, this is like the soda shop that we started with, but that was never the whole idea. We were just kind of forced into that corner. And now we want to show you what we really had envisioned.
I imagine it's become a real third space then for that town to be able to sit down and hang out all day.
Definitely. We're in a town of 450 people, Wilkeson, Washington. It's the gateway to Mount Rainier, one of the entrances, Carbon River entrance. And it's this tucked away, very small town, feels very rural, separated quite a bit by a highway from two other neighboring towns, but all part of this greater South Sound area, about an hour away from Seattle. So there is a lot of population density around us. You know, we're only 15 minutes from a Costco, but when you're on the road going to this town, like you feel like you're a world away, and people are like, oh gosh, you're so far out here. And we're like, no, it's not really, like it's 15 minutes, but it feels that way. So the nice thing is that it's become a third space not only for our town, which took time, by the way, because small towns don't love change always. And, but it's also become a place where, people who had been following this process of us doing this for years now come out and visit, and they come from all over Washington, or people from these larger surrounding towns are finding us. And that's really important too, because 450 people is not quite enough to survive on year round.
Yes. And luckily, again, too, folks are loving going more than ever to national parks, especially during summer. So I'm sure you see a little uptick during those seasons, too, as tourists come through.
Yeah, that has been the case. And that's one of the reasons the space really appealed to us in the first place is the previous places had always been seasonal, like May through October, based on national park visitors. And we were like, that's great. That would work really well for our schedules as moms and everything. It's actually changed. So new development. There's a bridge that is in between our town and the national park. It's a 100-year-old bridge that goes over a 300-foot canyon.
Wow.
And it wasn't painted for 30 years. Washington State has a bridge problem. So it just got shut down because it's unsafe to cross. So actually we're facing a really wild and still developing summer where we won't have national park traffic for the first time in over 100 years go through Wilkeson. And that's a big deal to this town and certainly to us.
Goodness. Well, that's definitely a challenge. I feel like folks in, say, Big Sur, California can relate, when they dealt with the landslide that still has not been cleared. And if anything, you two, I'm confident that you're going to pivot and you're going to do anything.
We're in the
you
midst
want
of
to
pivoting again, yes.
Now, here's something great that, has been happening and that you've been working hard on in addition to everything else. We connected because of your new cocktail recipe book, Drink Your Garden. You've done ebooks before. What made you decide this was the time to do a beautiful hardcover book that folks can bring home and bring home their practices?
One of the things is the accumulation of time and recipe development that has taken place over that time made it so that we knew we actually had enough for a book. The Cocktail Farm Club has 3 new recipes, both cocktails, and there's a mocktail version of the box and a cocktail version of the box. So every other month I was putting out 6 new recipes. So every year that's 36 new recipes. We've had it for 5 years. So you can do the math. There's a lot there to choose from. And we do free recipes on our website and on our blog. And we had those ebooks and we have all of these specials that we're developing for the bar at the soda shop. So there was just we have so much here that we've worked on. How are we going to package it and have it all in one place? For other people to enjoy, but also just a way to organize for ourselves to a point as well. And so I had always wanted to write a book. I felt like we had a really great story to tell through all of the things that we've been working on. And it really hit a unique point of view. I am a cookbook collector. I love to read a cookbook like it's a novel. I have so many cocktail books, and there was no one doing the book that I wanted to write, which is not just a foraged cocktails book and not just a seasonal cocktails book, but something that was really about okay, what are you already growing? What are you already seeing in farmers markets? Now let's translate that into drinks. And here's many, many different ways that you can do that through base recipes, whether that's a shrub, a syrup, a bitters, an infused spirit, actually teaching people the process of that instead of just giving them 75 cocktail recipes, because those are 2 very different things. Yeah. I envisioned something that was more like the joy of cooking and actually taught you to cook in the first few chapters. So it actually taught you how to bartend and how to grow for a bar and how to make these mixers. And then it showed you now use them in all these great recipes.
That's brilliant because, like you said, even certain simple syrups can just sound really daunting to the average person. They're like, how do I infuse? What do you mean?
Yeah, a lot of books, they give you the cocktail recipe and then underneath it is now make this syrup. But now I don't know what else to do with this syrup, right? Now I made this syrup and I used it in 2 drinks and I've got leftovers and it's just going to sit in my fridge. That's not the way that I do anything in my life. My kitchen is very much okay, I'm going to use everything to the fullest extent. And so we wanted a book that could teach you how to really stock a bar cart, if you will, and then use it in so many different ways.
And I think the other main thing is we talk about it in the book. We call it whole animal bartending. And so it's when you're spending so much time or money, if you're buying the ingredients, but if you're buying high quality ingredients, you want to use all of it. So that's how we think, because we are a business and because we're spending a lot of money on, let's say, organic blueberries, right? It's like, okay, I made a syrup. We have a blueberry lavender syrup, but now what can I do? I'm pulling all of these berries out and they're still good. Like there's still so much life left to them. And so it's like, what can I do with them? Because I spent a pretty penny on all of them. And so that's what we've gotten really good at from a business perspective, but also like Belinda said, just in our regular kitchens. I think that's like kind of that missing piece of going back to the very beginning of the interview of how it can feel very expensive to live and cook in this way. But the missing piece, I think, a lot is like really using every single ounce of your ingredients, then it becomes affordable. And so we have to do that because, again,
but that
restaurants.
Takes so much knowledge. That takes knowing how to plan a menu and knowing which parts of the thing are edible. And so that's what the book set out to do, is like, here's every way you could use this.
Yeah. So if you have all these leftover blueberry holes, like what other parts of a drink can you make with them? That was the hardest part about the book, is being specific enough to give people very specific ideas, but then also really trying to get the point across that like, this is just meant to spark your creativity. Like once you do it in this very specific way, now think about what else could you do? And hopefully that's what it inspires.
And it turns out there's really practical ways to do that in a cookbook, which it's like after every recipe, there's a little box that tells you like, okay, if you want to amp this up even more, here's 3 other suggestions. Here's also other places in the book where this syrup is used, so you know how else to use it. And so there's all of this cross-referencing, which was an absolute bear in editing. Very, very helpful as a user.
I think that's brilliant because, again, you don't want to feel wasteful too in the kitchen. You feel like sometimes you buy one ingredient and it's a huge amount and you need this much and you're like, great, it's just going to sit here. So I think you two are brilliant as entrepreneurs too, in that you're always consistently thinking, what's the smartest way to go about this so that there is as little waste as possible and that you're being as efficient and as effective, even if it's a matter of giving folks those types of tips and that mindset in their own kitchens. So thank you. I think that's amazing. So what's it been like in terms of the process? Did you enjoy writing the behind the scenes with the photo shoots? And then you've had to go on a book tour since. That must be very different than the typical work that you were doing.
Yeah, we've said a lot during this book tour that it's sort of like having a baby. Right after you do it, you're like, never again. And then the trauma like dissipates over time and you want to do it again. So writing in the moment was really, really challenging. Also because we don't set other things down very well. So we kept everything else going and wrote a book on top of it, which meant that for 2 years we were very, very busy and some things had to drop or not get done perfectly, which I struggle with. But the writing of it was a really fun process creatively. And that's really what drew me to it and made us want to prioritize it. I did most of the writing of the book. That's like my wheelhouse. There were pieces specific to the farm or gardening or things that Venice wrote. But a lot of the like stories and introductions were mine. And that was really fun because I, as a cookbook lover, love when I actually am excited enough by the intro to want to read it, where it doesn't just feel like the SEO section of a blog, right? I'm like, I want that intro to either give me more practical information or like bring me along on why I should make this and what kind of emotions this is going to give, all those things. So there's a lot of family stories there. There's a lot of background, and that part was really fun to write. The layout and editorial was so brand new. That publishing is a world we knew nothing about. And so as business people who are used to working one way, it was challenging to adopt this whole other way of working in the format that works for your publisher. But we did have a literary agent that helped us through that process. We were introduced to her through a mentor, and she was very helpful. And the photo shoots were also really unique. I'll let Venice talk about those, but we did it in a way that we wanted everything to be seasonal and actually from the farm because, of course, like a cherry tomato looks very different from the farm, just picked versus from a store. But also we were inspired by another cookbook author who we went to a talk and heard Allison Roman at a Cherry Bomb event. And so we were really into that. So
yeah, so we wanted the photography to feel like you are in the moment with us. We didn't want it to be incredibly staged. And because our drinks are so unique and so seasonal, we had to be the ones who styled them, primarily Belinda. So she got to go to a lot of antique shopping and get a lot of props, which was maybe one of her favorite parts.
Yeah, I did the prop styling and the drink styling, and the shoots had to be seasonal. So we had to have a photographer who was willing to work with us on that, which meant a lot of shoots.
And I got to be the hand model a lot of times.
Yeah.
But
Oh my
which
goodness.
meant I do not have better hands. I have farmer hands. And so we actually had to go get my nails done for the cover shoot because my nails never look great. So, but our very, very good friend is the photographer on it. And she has been with us from like the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
We met over Instagram randomly, and she just asked one day if she could come out and photograph me on the farm. And I was like, sure. I don't know what you're going to take photos of, but great. And ever since then, we've been friends. And so she has done, I would say, probably about 80% of our photo shoots in general. And so we already had this like big library of photos that she had taken. And so when we got the book deal, we called her up and we were like, hey, Riley, like we got this book deal. Do you want to be our photographer for it? And she was like freaking out, but then also was like, I don't know how to shoot food. Like she's a lifestyle photographer and she's great. And I love her because I'm obviously I have a lot of expressions on my face. And so my eyes are usually closed and my mouth is usually doing really weird things. And so
Before.
yeah, so she was able to capture me. She knows that she just has to take like 8 photos of me and then hopefully one of them is good. And so it was really nice to be able to work with her, but it was different. And so because it's also seasonal and we wanted the things to actually be from our farm, we had to do like 7 photo shoots. We did photo shoots for an entire year, and we had to do
Through every season. It would be like, oh, okay, these are about to bloom. Are you free in the next 4 days? We need to do a shoot. And we were doing it just out of this big Google Doc and trying to organize. It's also really hard to take photos for a book when you don't know the layout yet, because you're just guessing. It was just like, I know this drink is going to be really visual, so there should be a photo of it. But then you don't know, are there going to be 5 photos in a row and then 6 pages with no photos? So then we had to go back through after it was laid out. And in some cases, we actually had to like shoot a couple more times to get all of those holes filled. So there was some naivety there as authors that both worked for and against us. And then the photography was only possible to have that we wanted people to feel like they were doing a season of life on the cocktail farm with us. And that was, in Allison Roman's lecture, she was like, I rented a house and my friends came over and we all cooked. And then we took these photos that feel very real because they were. And so that's how we wanted to do it as well. So basically the most challenging way to shoot a cookbook, a lot of times it's just like a studio and you tell them, you give them the recipes, you send off maybe some specific props or ingredients that you really want included, but you give them the rest of the control. And we didn't do it that way.
I'm sure it paid off though. And that it feels like you said, very authentic, very your brand. And that is something that we're even seeing in content in general, is a little less of the picture perfect that was, say, Instagram over the last 10 to 15 years. And we're getting real again. People like that authenticity. So I need to pick up a copy. I need to see this myself and to go through it this summer. That's for sure.
Yeah, we've had great feedback about the photos. It's one of the things people pick it up and they're like, oh, I knew the recipes would be good, or I was already excited about it, but this is so much more than I expected. It's a full hardcover cookbook, which a lot of cocktail books are smaller. So it looks good on your counter or on your coffee table. And then it's got a lot of full color photos. And that was very important to us, that it felt immersive.
Yes. So without giving the farm away, pun intended, what are some tips that you can give us as summer gets underway here? We're able to grow herbs outside across the country, not just on the gorgeous West Coast. Are there any certain cocktails that you suggest that we lean towards? Or again, anything about gardening itself so that we can get ready to have very fresh cocktails here?
Well, I definitely recommend growing herbs, perennial herbs especially, on any garden, especially if you're starting small or doing containers or don't have as much space, right? Herbs are great. They're also a great companion plant to put in your vegetable garden. And then people don't always know what to do with them because nobody needs that much of anything, right? And so we encourage you to cut and dry and preserve them. And we've got information on that in the book, but also put them in cocktail. I would also say, especially for you, more of the palate of savory, there's a great martini recipe in there that's a riff of the Gibson, which is traditionally a pickled cocktail onion, and then you make a vodka martini, but we do it with a chive blossom. So you actually infuse the chive blossom into a vinegar, and then you use that pickled chive blossom when you shake up the martini, and it looks beautiful. It's got that little purple poof at the bottom of your glass, and it tastes great. It's more mild than an onion, so it's just got a very unique, fun spring flavor.
Oh my goodness, these just sound like the most perfect dinner party drinks too. Again, you want something that wows folks. It's easy, and you can be like, oh yeah, I just whipped up my little chive blossom martini for you tonight.
Yeah. There's also just really practical things though too. Like if you already like a Bloody Mary and you've been growing a ton of tomatoes and you get to that point where like no one can make another sauce or salsa at the end of the season, there's a great Bloody Mary recipe, and you can just make that and then freeze it in bags and bust out a colada or a Bloody Mary whenever you want, or just drink it as tomato juice. And it's way, way better than anything out of a can.
I love that one because I make sauce every year, and it doesn't actually, it uses very little of the pulp and all of the juice from the tomato, which typically people just throw away. And so because they're making the sauce. And so it's like, if you're already making sauce, freeze the juice and keep it for your Bloody Marys, because we both used to say that we didn't like Bloody Marys, and it turned out what we found was that we actually just don't like canned tomato juice. And we only like it fresh because we're
bougie.
You know what? This might be my problem, because I'm also love a pasta sauce, love a pizza, love tomatoes in so many forms. And then I cannot drink a Bloody Mary. I'm like, I'm drinking pizza sauce right now. This is weird. I don't want it. So you know what? This is something else I'm going to have to try. You've opened my eyes. You've opened my eyes to a lot today.
Is we have two other ones. We have a Bloody Bunny, which is a carrot juice base. And then we have a Verde Maria, which is like a salsa verde in a tequila kind of riff on a Bloody Mary. And those are both, I still like those better than a traditional Bloody Mary, each of those.
And that one's got tomatillos, so it's green.
And tomatillos just go crazy for people typically, and you have no idea what to do with them. So
yeah.
Oh,
I can't wait. Oh, this is going to be the best summer of cocktails and mocktails ever. All thanks to you two. Thank you. So a little last question here before we get to the world's best and hardest question. And we have a riff on that question today, since you are drink-based. So what is a piece of advice you like to give folks who are looking to start their own business, whether it's within food and bev and agriculture or any other space?
I think the theme we've found is that tenacity is like your strongest tool. And if you're willing to stick with things, a lot of businesses that are success stories are for no other reason than they stuck it around through the hard times and made out the other side and then grew slowly and eventually got there. Like that overnight success that you hear about on How I Built This or other programs, love them. I listen to them religiously, but it's like you have to really listen to the parts where they almost quit, or, you know, it was miserable for 10 years and then it turned into something else. That's one of my big pieces, because I think that there's a lot of, social media does this to us, but there's also just a lot of highlight reels in business, because as a business person, of course, you want to show off your most successful pieces. It doesn't always serve you to be transparent on the internet when you're a business owner, but there are really hard parts along the way.
Yeah. And following up on that, I would say it's ask for help. None of us know everything. And so there have been multiple points from like kickstarting the soda shop when we had $0 and we needed to renovate. We
raised $17,000 from our family, and it was
what's something.
Yeah. And it's just like people want to help you. And then the book, we have a book deal because we asked a mentor, like sitting in her parents' kitchen one day, like, oh yeah, we would like to write a book. What do you think about that? And just like not being afraid of a dumb idea, I think is like imposter syndrome is real. But if you are feeling like you're not ready, then just ask somebody for help.
But ask with humility and with, don't expect anyone to do your job for you either.
True. Yeah.
There's a lot of people asking for free advice without a lot of like thought to what that would mean to the business owner to give away that information.
Well, also,
so you have to have a
I
balance.
think you can't ask for help without a relationship. Like you have to build the relationship first. So we didn't ask a complete stranger for help. We asked people who we had already invested in. Like we'd already built that relationship. So then it's like,
There's
that's a no-brainer.
Each other coming back and forth, and they're like, oh, they understand enough about you to know whether it is a good idea or not, and things like that.
Yeah. So I guess the third piece of advice is like absolutely invest in your community as much as you can. Whether that's like physical community or it's your online community, whatever community it is that you find, because it's going to be your community that's going to help you build the business every step of the way. It's like, you know, when I will throw an idea out to somebody just in passing, they're like, oh yeah, let me help you with that. No, but it's because I have that relationship with them.
Yeah, those are very good pieces of advice. And they all come together in the sense of, yes, you might be wanting to do something yourself, but if you give back to others and you put in the work, if you put in the good energy, you're going to get it back here too. And I think you two are such a great example of that. So you're welcome. You're welcome. It's true. Okay, so this podcast is called The Perfect Bite because it's a bit of a perfect bite of my career to date, from journalist to startup founder to working with folks in food and bev. But it is because each of us has our own unique taste buds and special memories, those things that just get stirred up, and a flavor that lasts with us that we'll never forget. In your case, you can happily answer what is your perfect bite, but I'd like to start with each of you. What is your perfect sip?
Okay. Well, I have a very floral, citrusy, and dry palate. So I love a drink that's like gin, Lillet Blanc, or another like floral kind of liqueur or aperitif. And then some kind of a really light syrup, like we do a herb garden syrup. So I like something very herbaceous. It's got like rosemary and sage and thyme and lemon, and then a little fresh lemon juice. That's what I would shake up for myself every time. And a cucumber garnish.
Ooh, yes.
This is such a hard one for me, and because I was the picky sister, I still let Belinda order drinks off of menus for me. I think she knows my taste better than I know my own. So like she'll always pick out something that I wouldn't necessarily find. But I do love spicy, and I love juices, and sour and spicy are my thing. So I love like a spicy margarita. But I will also say that my perfect drink is one that either Belinda or somebody else makes for me.
I think that's sweet. Yeah, there's a lot of love in there. Oh, Venice, Belinda, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story, sharing just your lifestyle that I think we could all benefit from. And I'm excited for folks to pick up a copy of Drink Your Garden, as well as check out the rest of the extensions of your business here. Can you let them know where they can find you in terms of the website, your social media, and any venues?
Absolutely. So Drink Your Garden is available wherever books are sold. You can buy it on Amazon, or you can buy it on bookshop.org from your local bookstore. Barnes and Noble. We also sell it on our site, and we would love if you bought it from us, and then copies will be signed. So simplegoodnesssisters.com is our website where you can buy syrups, the book Drink Your Garden, learn more about our events, and check out recipes. And then we're on TikTok at Simple Goodness Sis, and Instagram is our biggest platform that we spend the most time on, and it's Simple Goodness Sisters.
Amazing. Thank you again, too, for your time. This is fantastic. I'm ready for happy hour. It's a little early here, but you know, it's never too early for a beautiful mocktail. Well, Belinda, Venice, thank you again so much. And everyone, thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite. This was Belinda Kelly and Venice Cunningham's Perfect Sip.
Thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite today. You can listen to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks in advance for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. You can follow The Perfect Bite on social media at Perfect Bite Pod. Now go get something good to eat.